Good evening and welcome to Talk of the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, your host, coming to you from the BNN Live studios, Eggleston Square, Jamaica Plain, where tonight on the Boston Neighborhood Network, we continue our election 2013 coverage in a big way with not just one, but two mayoral candidates joining us tonight. And that's right, as we turn the corner here on August, headed towards the home stretch, towards the preliminary election, September 24th. We're wrapping up our series talking with all of the major candidates running for office for mayor, all 12 of them, and tonight we have two of them. First up, City Councilor Charles Yancey, who's unique in many ways, but including he is the only candidate who's running not only for mayor, but for his own council seat, and we'll talk to him about that. Then in the second half, the co-founder and one of the owners of 106.1 FM Internet Radio, Charles Clemons, joins us, and we'll find out what brought him into the race and what he hopes to accomplish. All that and more tonight on Talk of the Neighborhoods. All right, we're back with Talk of the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, your host tonight. All politics, as is our usual want, and what a show tonight. Not just one, but two mayoral candidates joining us tonight as we continue towards the home stretch of the preliminary election. Of course, with 12 candidates on the ballot, it's anybody's race to be had, and they're all working very hard, including my first guest tonight, who is, he's unique in many ways. As I mentioned before, he is running not only for mayor, he is running also at the same time for re-election to his council seat. That's the District 4 council seat, encompassing Dorchester and Mattapan primarily. And I am so pleased to have joining us in the studio, Charles Yancey. Nice to have you here, Charles.
It's a pleasure, John. Thank you for all your work and taking time out of your busy schedule to host the dozen of us or so running for mayor of Boston.
It's been, it's been very illuminating. This is a very tight race, and I'm sure no one needs to tell you that. All the polls show, everybody kind of bunched together here, and you've kind of taken an unusual tack towards this, in that you not only are running for mayor, you're running for re-election in your council seat. Yes. And a lot of people are wondering about that. One, I think a lot of people didn't realize you could do that. And what made you decide to do that?
Well, first of all, if I can look right in that camera,
go for it.
My name is Charles Yancey, and I'm running for mayor of Boston. Now that I've got that out the way, Joe. I am, as you know, the longest serving member of the Boston City Council. If elected mayor, I believe I will walk into that office with more experience in Boston city government than any of my predecessors. And I think that's very significant. But to get to your question, and I'm not trying to avoid it, I am leaving my name on the ballot for city council. Some 2,000 of my constituents signed my petitions asking me to run.
So you had two?
Oh yes,
two petitions.
Listen. Just because you're an incumbent doesn't mean you're not required to go through the same process as any other candidate for office. So in the signature drive, we collected 9,000 signatures for mayor, 2,000 signatures for city council, and most of them, of course, were duplicates. People signed for both. So my constituents figured it out long before the general public did. And my supporters had almost a sense of relief to know I was running for both. My critics and opponents, of course, their job is to do what they can to diminish their opponent. So you have to keep that in context. But the reason, let me just tell you this.
Sure, go.
This is done routinely for national elections. A lot of people don't realize it, but you recall somebody by the name of Senator Lieberman, who ran with Al Gore. He ran as for position of vice president, but he kept his name on the ballot in the great state of Connecticut. And unfortunately, even though Gore and Lieberman got more votes than the opponents, they did not serve in the White House. But Lieberman was able to retain his Senate seat because he had the wisdom to keep his name on the ballot. And the people in Connecticut voted for him both for vice president and for senator. And I'm asking
As
people,
an independent, interestingly enough.
so I'm at that time, he was running as a Democrat. He became an independent later on. So I'm asking people who live in District 4, which has been reconfigured to include parts of Rosendale and JP of all things.
There you go.
As well as parts of Lower Mills and most of Fields Corner. I'm asking them to vote for me for city council and for mayor. And if things go well in September and I'm on the ballot for November, I'm going to ask them to do the same thing. And then, Joe, I may have to come to you and ask your advice. If I'm elected both positions.
Let's see, which one will
Mayor
I take?
or city council? I may have to consult with you or Hillary or Ken or somebody else about that. Maybe I'll ask my wife, Marzella.
Well,
she will probably say, stay in the council office because she doesn't want necessarily become the first lady of Boston. But I think she'll do a great job.
You know, of course, Joe Lieberman is the only one. Paul Ryan, more recently, was reelected.
Michelle Beckman did the same thing.
That's right, reelected to his House seat in Wisconsin, even though he's on the ballot. But implied, and I'm playing a little devil's advocate here, as I want to do, is, and I don't know if I call them critics, but are suggesting because you did that, you're not serious about running for mayor. That if you were serious, you'd be willing to risk all, like Rob Consalvo, who's given up his District 5 seat to run for Mike Ross, who's given up.
Let's be very candid about all of this. My guess is that none of my opponents figured this out, that they could do both. Most people, even most political pundits, didn't realize it until I actually did it. So again, my opponents will find anything to criticize their opponents for. That's their job. But I look at it a little differently. I mean, I'm in it even more deeply than those candidates who are just running for mayor. I believe that my 30 years of experience prepares me well to be mayor of Boston. I'm very familiar with every department. I'm very familiar with the budget. And again, I will walk into the mayor's office with more experience than any of my predecessors who served as mayor of Boston. So to suggest somehow I'm less than committed is just kind of silly on its face, because I have to work even harder. And I'm running to serve all the people of Boston, preferably as the chief executive officer of the city.
And you're deadly serious. This isn't just some kind of ego-driven thing. Some people just, and some others in many races, and you've had some opponents like this that just run to put their name on the ballot because they want to be seen as having done it, and they have no desire, no real commitment, no intent to.
People accuse me of a lot of things, but lack of commitment has never been one of them. And quite frankly, I've had the honor and privilege of serving the people of Boston for 30 years. And during that time, we've had many, many success stories. The first South African divestment legislation of any major city in the United States of America was a piece of legislation I authored. The ban on the distribution of free cigarette samples back in the early 80s was my legislation, and it was the first in the nation. I was kind of shocked. I mean, it just made sense to stop people from distributing free cigarette samples because that got people hooked. But it was groundbreaking, so much so that I was invited to the Ritz-Carlton in New York City by the American Cancer Society, who honored me for that effort. And if you drive down Blue Hill Avenue, you will see the most state-of-the-art public library in the city of Boston, branch library in the city of Boston, located at 1350 Blue Hill Avenue, the Mattapan Branch Library. We fought hard for that, to make that happen. The Morton and Blue Hill Avenue, you see a police station. We filed a loan order and got that built. The Mildred Avenue Community Center and the Gallivan Community Center was as a direct result of our efforts, working with the community, with the administration, and my colleagues. We got it done over initial opposition. So I have critics, and and they're supposed to be critics since they're running against me. But I would match my record against any of my opponents, and I believe that the people of Boston deserve the best leadership possible. And as mayor of Boston, I'm going to make sure that Boston is one of the cleanest cities in the United States of America, and yes, one of the safest cities.
Well, and I want to talk to you about that, but first I got to ask you this because, and honestly, I don't think anybody knows, and as I said, the polls show very little, if anything. But when it's mentioned, those that many pundits think have a real shot at winning this, they don't include you, despite the fact of, I hear you, what you've done. Does that bother you? Does that anger you?
No, it doesn't anger me. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are bunched in the very low percentages, according to one poll of 600 people, and I believe it was even done online. Some people, not everyone's online, not all the seniors are online. Mm-hmm. But we're going to do very well on September 24th. We're going to surprise a lot of the pundits. I've already surprised them with this move to keep my name on the ballot, but they're going to be shocked to see me as one of the top 2 finishers on September 24th. We have a strong team. We have very active volunteers. And all I can say, Joe, is that you haven't seen anything yet.
Well, and back to, just very quickly, because I do want to ask you mainly about some of the issues in the mayoral race, but you're not concerned that somehow your constituents in District 4 are thinking that Charles has forsook them for higher ground, and that you could leave yourself open, vulnerable for the District 4 seat if you ultimately aren't successful as mayor?
Well, the people have been very good to me, and I've tried to be very good to them. So I am very, very thankful that my constituents have been so patient and supportive of me all these years. And it's paid off, but we still have many, many challenges in the city of Boston, and I'm still ready to deal with them. And I believe that Yancey administration is going to be one that everyone in the entire city of Boston is going to be proud of.
How will it be different? I think a lot of these candidates are afraid to be critical of what's there now for fear of alienating Mayor Menino and the Menino machine. How will the Yancey administration be different, and are you willing to kind of bump up against that?
Well, I think I've been doing that pretty consistently over the years, but I think the more important thing is not, certainly I'm not in the business of trashing anyone else. I think that Tom Menino has a lot to be proud of. During his 20 years.
You guys came in, you got a couple of years on him, I think.
No, we actually were elected the same day.
Was it the same year?
1983.
Right.
He was elected city councilor of District 5. I was elected in District 4. In fact, I was just at a dedication ceremony, what they call the Rosendale Community Center. I said, you know what, I've been around for a while, but I never heard of the Rosendale Community Center. And of course, it wasn't the Rosendale Community Center, it was Archdale Community Center.
Right.
And Tommy and I sat down as city councilor. I told him I'll support his community center in Rosendale, the Archdale Community Center, if he would support mine in Mattapan, the Galavan. And both of those came on roughly at the same time. So it was kind of nice to see the Archdale Community Center dedicated to Tom Menino last week. That was well-deserved. It's what he did as a city councilor. And I think he deserved that honor.
Well, so I think same now. Well, let's just go through them. Would you keep his police chief? Because you have talked, for years, but more recently about the lack of diversity in the upper command. Would you keep Ed Davis there?
It's a critical issue. Commissioner Davis has his strong and weak points, like all of us. And I would just say that in terms of my leadership team in the mayor's office, we'll sit down and look at folks who are currently there, but ultimately we'll probably open up the position of police commissioner to a national search. If Ed Davis wants to be considered, I certainly will consider him, but I will not automatically have him as my next police commissioner.
Dr. Carol Johnson, of course, she's leaving. She's actually, I think, officially retired now, and of course, there's an interim superintendent in there. Did she do a good job? Were you satisfied with her work? I know you've been battling for years to try and get a high school built in Mattapan with, no luck. And the administration, including the superintendent, hasn't been very helpful there. Would you shake that up? Are you?
Let me say this. As mayor, we definitely will build at least one, possibly two new high schools for the students of Boston. I think it's disgraceful that we have more than 4,000 Boston Public High School students attending classes in substandard facilities, like the children at Boston Arts Academy, even the Quincy Upper High School was constructed in 1911 as the Abraham Lincoln Elementary School. And they don't begin to have the facilities that the children in Newton North have. They don't have the gymnasium or the cafeteria or the science labs. The arts program, all of our high school students deserve to have first-class facilities. So we have 18,000 Boston Public High School students, but only 14,000 high school seats.
Let me ask you about that.
So
because,
it's not just, Joe, it's not just a question of shortage of high school seats, but it's the quality of those facilities. We need 21st century facilities for our 21st century children.
Well, wasn't there a story or a study that recently came out that showed that, in fact, though, Boston has excess seats?
Yeah, and what a fact.
And they were like, what were they going to do? And you're talking about building new high schools, and they're saying we've got too many.
Let me put it this way. I was extremely shocked and surprised that the Boston Globe even reprinted what came out of the school department's office on those numbers.
Why, were they wrong?
They were wrong, categorically wrong.
How so?
My argument for 15 years, and the argument of the mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission report, Tom Menino's Blue Ribbon Commission report, which came out in 1996, made a distinction between high school seats and non-high school seats. Now, a seat in the Quincy Upper School is what the Globe and the school department considered high school seats. That's the elementary school building. The seats in the basement of the YWCA on Clarendon Street, the Globe considered that to be those to be high school seats. And I was just shocked with the intellectual dishonesty presented in that memo, and that was regurgitated by Larry Howman and the Globe editorial board. Listen, don't take my word for it. Visit the schools.
So you're saying they're seats, but they're not quality seats?
They are not seats for high school students. And what has been happening in the city of Boston in the last decade is really inexcusable, because we even had a case where they closed down the Hyde Park Educational Complex over my objection. 900 high school students were there, but they were transferred, at least some of them, to the Grover Cleveland Middle School, and we had to spend another $1 million just to retrofit the lockers at that school. What a waste of money that was. I warned the superintendent, the school committee, and even one of the members of the school committee is running for mayor. I warned him and the other members and the mayor, don't close that school. We need more seats for high school students, not less. They closed it anyhow.
So you're saying they've been disingenuous, if nothing else, if not outright dishonest about it.
Actually, in terms of the recent memo that was sent to the city council saying that it would be a poor use of public dollars to build a high school, was disgraceful. And that's the only way I can put it. Now, I guarantee you they're going to start looking around and try and find some high school seats for these high school students. We need to build at least one state-of-the-art high school in the city of Boston, because, again, keep in mind, I make the distinction between seats that are in substandard buildings and seats are in your traditional high school buildings. You know, like Boston Technical High that I went to is now Boston Latin Academy.
That's right.
It's an old, antiquated building, but at least it had the amenities that most high school students deserve.
Would we be in this situation if we had had an elected school committee? Do you subscribe to the appointed versus the elected committee, as some have suggested?
I tell you that I've had the chance to experience both. During my first 10 years on the city council, we had an elected school committee. And we could not even hold a hearing on the school department or the school budget without members of that body coming to the city council advocating for those students and advocating for more resources and challenging the mayor and challenging the city council. John O'Brien will always be there. G. McGuire would be there. Dan Burke would be there. Since we've had the appointed school committee, it's a rarity to see any members of the school committee even come during budget time. What does that tell you?
Although some would say the schools weren't very good back then, and others would say they're still not very good.
Well,
but
I would
are
say
you satisfied with the
absolutely
progress that's
not.
made? Who would you put in there? What would you change?
Well, first of all, I would say that the mayor, even Mayor Yancey, would not have a monopoly of knowledge or wisdom. I would welcome an elected school committee. And I would welcome the challenge and the give and take. I think that's important. And by the way, if the appointed school committee was so great, why is Boston, out of the 351 cities and towns, why is Boston the only one that has an appointed school committee? You know, I have a lot of friends who even serve as chairman of their elected school committee. They go back to their suburban communities, and they can vote for theirs. Even the head of the Boston Municipal Research Bureau, he lives in the suburban areas. He votes for his school committee, but he doesn't think that it would be appropriate for the voters of Boston to elect their school committee. I guess there's something about the level of intelligence of Boston residents that we can't discern between who would be a good member of the school committee.
So you change that up. Who would you put in there to run? Give us an idea, and I'm sure there'd be a search, and there will be a search.
Oh, absolutely.
But give us an idea of the type of person that you'd put in there that would could really make a difference. During
my first 2 years or so as mayor of Boston, I will have the opportunity to select the next school committee members and ultimately the superintendent. So I look for someone who has the love and compassion for our children, along with the technical and managerial skills to run a very complex organization.
Anybody come to mind?
Well, I actually thought Dr. Lois Harrison Jones had that unique combination of skill and compassion. Former superintendent. So she, she's still interested in coming back to Boston. I would bring her back. How's that?
Okay, again, Charles Yancey is here. He's running for mayor tonight. It's an all-mayor show as we turn the corner of August and head towards the home stretch of the preliminary election. We've got just a few minutes left with Councilor Yancey. As you look at the field and you look at how this is breaking down, of course, on paper, as you've mentioned before when you've been here, and which many people have, Boston is now a so-called majority-minority city. Majority of the residents, and I believe the majority of the voters now are people of color. And does that give you an advantage as a well-known and high-ranking African-American?
Joe, I like to think I'm a well-known and ranking public servant for the entire city of Boston. I am asking everyone in the city of Boston to vote for me for mayor of Boston. No matter what the race, gender, sexual orientation, I seek to represent the entire city. That's how I was raised. I'm one of 9 children of Alice and Howard Yancey, and they told me that everyone has to be treated fairly and equally. So that's what I intend to do. I want to make every neighborhood of Boston safe, every neighborhood of Boston clean. I want our children to receive the best education of any other area in the entire country. And I believe I have the requisite skills and commitment to make it happen. And I usually, as you know, I do not accept no for an answer. I was told no when I endeavored to build a police station in District 4 when there was none when I was elected. We were told no, but there's a station there today. I was told no when we're fighting to build that community center at Gallivan community at the BHA housing there. I was told no, but there's a community center there today. I was told no when I sought to build another community center serving the young people in the district. But there's another community center, the Mildred Avenue Community Center there today.
Beautiful.
I was told no when we sought to build a new library. And now the best branch library in the entire city of Boston sits in Mattapan. So I don't accept no for an answer. And I know that aggravates some people every once in a while. But the bottom line is that the people of Boston deserve the best. And we should never tolerate the level of violence and sense of hopelessness that exists in certain parts of the city. And I will invest money in the cold case squad, and I'll deal with the past homicides, get those cleared up. I will hire an army of mentors and youth workers and outreach workers to intervene before a young person even thinks about dropping out of school or even thinks about getting involved in some negative activity. Right now we have only 30 street workers to cover the entire city of Boston.
And if, despite that, the voters tell you no, will you be discouraged?
Oh, absolutely not. Listen, I'm here to serve. I'm just asking the people of Boston for their consideration. I have a strong background. I am more familiar with the budget than anyone else in this race. I have more knowledge about every department of city government than anyone in this race, and I don't fear contradiction from anyone. The only person in the city of Boston who has as much knowledge and information as I do about the city of Boston is my friend Tom Menino.
The one who's retiring, so
we're
Charles,
both elected, and I intend to...
I want to thank you for coming by and joining us tonight. Again, Charles Yancey, he's one of 12 on the ballot for mayor, also running at the same time for re-election to his District 4 council seat. Here tonight on Talking the Neighborhoods as we look forward towards the September preliminary elections and the outcomes of those. Charles, as always, I enjoyed having you here. Another Charles, and in his own right, as well known, Charles Clemons. He is the co-founder and radio personality for 106.1 Touch FM on the internet, and we'll talk with him about his decision. Joe Heisler, your host tonight. All politics as our usual want, and terrific show, an all mayoral show. And in this segment, another Charles running for mayor of the city of Boston, in his own right, just as special, as interesting as our last guest. He is the co-founder of a radio station here in Boston that's getting a lot of play, 106.1 FM. Most people know it as Touch FM, which he helped to co-found in 2006, and he's been hosting a show there as well. But he is, in his own right, has a claim to fame. He's the first candidate in this race, and as it so happens, he's number one on the ballot as well. But he announced back in 2011 his intention to run, whether Mayor Menino ran for re-election or not. And we're talking, of course, about Charles Clemons. And Charles, I'm so happy to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Joe.
Well, tell us about that. 2011, Mayor Menino was, he wasn't maybe as experiencing the health concerns that he had that ultimately, I think, led to his decision not to run. But that didn't stop you. You decided back then. What inspired you?
Well, you know, having a radio show, a talk show host for almost 8 years now, and listening to the concerns of the communities, you know, the lack of quality schools in every neighborhood, safety, taxes going up on our elderly, jobs, unemployment, listening to those issues, and then having this platform where we discuss solutions, and going out on the picket lines and marching with the community. In 2011, I dropped my daughter off at Howard University, and a proud parent. But I was listening to the young people talk about what they were going to do when they graduate from college. And these were sophomores talking. And I said to myself, is there anything else that I can do to be part of the solution? I'm a successful businessman. I've run, I've started 5 successful businesses from the ground up. Never got a loan from the bank. Hard worker, understand struggle. Hired thousands of Boston residents. 75% of them had quarries. 100 of them have gone on to start their own business. A former Boston police officer who put a badge on, walked the streets of Grove Hall, gave my life for my communities. Was a former correctional officer.
Before that?
Became a correctional officer because I wanted to make sure that the people behind the walls were treated fairly. And then I said, after a year, wait a minute, let's take the police exam. I could get to them before they get behind the wall. I was a special police officer for 4 years. On my birthday, August the 21st, I decided in front of 450 people to announce that I was running for mayor. Actually, that day, the city council made it Charles Clemons Day in the city of Boston. And it's about being part of the solution and not sitting by the sidelines and watching things happen. You know, I have beautiful children. I have a military police officer, my son. I have a daughter who went to Iraq. She's now a police officer in Atlanta. We've always been about communities, service. Successful businessman. Running the city of Boston is a business, $2.4, $2.6 billion. My grandfather said, Joe, if you want to be a billionaire, surround yourself with billionaires. If you want to be a millionaire, surround yourself with millionaires. Well, there's a machine that's in existence right now. However, every machine needs to be fine-tuned, oiled, and parts replaced. I'm young. I have a vision, new vision. I have ideas. However, Joe, I'm not a career politician, so I don't know it all. So that means I will welcome great ideas. The Clemons administration will be totally transparent, and everyone will be welcome at the table, including our youth, because that's our future. How can we possibly be global if we don't include our future, our children? And the city of Boston has turned their backs on our children for many of years. So I couldn't stand by, Joe, and watch the same old happen, same thing happen over and over again. The haves and the have-nots, the served and the underserved. We're truly going to be Boston one, and we need to be one.
Well, and you certainly have an impressive resume and background, and perhaps more so than many of the candidates in the race. I hate to say that, but yet, lots of times, if you haven't been elected to office, people are sometimes reluctant to put somebody in there who's never served. I'm wondering what the reaction is, and why start with mayor? Why not run for council? Like you started as a corrections officer, you became a police officer, you moved on to starting businesses, multiple businesses, so on and so forth. And I'm playing a little devil's advocate here,
It's
don't get me
okay.
wrong here, but
It's all right.
why not run for, even though Charles Clemons may not be a household name yet in Boston, maybe, why not start at that level?
Joe, I'm a successful businessman. I create things from nothing. Running the city of Boston is a business. However, I know there is a machine in place. I am qualified. I've been self-employed since the age of 14, Joe. 14. Again, I've given my life to my communities. I know about service. I know about budgets. I know about accounts receivable and payable. I know about people. I know about giving people a chance. I understand about listening to people. I understand that we are in a serious condition where we have, Joe, the haves and the have-nots. It's about doing the right thing for all of the communities. It's about doing the right thing for everyone.
And I'm not asking you to criticize them per se, but that would imply that what has been going on in this city for 20 years isn't working.
On the contrary.
And what would you do different? Help us to understand what you do different.
Joe, we don't have quality schools in every neighborhood.
It's true.
If we're going to be a great city with great schools, we can't have great schools over here and non-great schools over here. That's not a great city. Again, I said in the beginning, we can't have the haves and the have-nots. Our children are our future. Joe, we've turned our backs on our children. When I say we, maybe you not as an individual, but we as communities, we've turned our back on our children. There are some of us who feel my child is fine, he or she has graduated, she's getting a quality education. Well, I'm one of those parents. But then I had to say, Joe, wait a minute. These are my children. I can't be in this little bubble and I'm satisfied. And we have parents that are working 2 and 3 jobs, Joe, 2 and 3 jobs. And they have to decide, do they pay the rent or do they send their child to a private school? That's not right. You have to have a conscience. I truly believe, Joe, that my brothers and sisters' problems are my problems. And we solve those problems together. It's time for real change, Joe.
What would you do? Help us. Help us understand the changes you would bring.
Well, let's start off with schools, education.
Good.
Real simple. It's not rocket science. It's a human and a civil right for children to have quality schools, equal access for all children, and closing the achievement gap. It's a civil and a human right. We have Tier 1 schools. You know what a Tier 1 school, for our listening audience that may not know what a Tier 1 school is, if you took a report card, A, B, C, D, well, a Tier 1 school would be an A school. A Tier 4 school would be a D school. Well, we don't have enough Tier 1 schools. So that means a parent has a choice. Not paying the rent, not putting heat in the house, sending a child to a private school, or sending a child, a brilliant child, a smart, intelligent child, to a Tier 4 school. That means you're already setting the child up to fail. That's not right.
How do you
and
turn,
it's been going.
How do you turn this around, though?
Well, we have Tier.
Dr. Johnson's been, and I'm going to give her credit where credit.
Absolutely.
She's been trying.
Absolutely.
I think,
but we need the participation of everyone. We need the participation of the parents. We need the participation of the teachers. We need teachers who care about the students. We need teachers who look like the students. We need resources in the schools so that the child feels inspired to go to school. They should be able to open up a book, Joe, and see themselves in that book in a positive light. Civics was removed from the Boston public schools 20 plus years ago, Joe. Black history was removed from the Boston public schools 20 plus years ago, Joe. 87% of the students in the Boston public schools are children of color, Latino, Black, Haitian, Asian Pacific, Korean. Imagine having history for our children as a core curriculum that will have the other students and even the parents. You would respect the individual when you understand the global contribution they have done in history. Imagine the refrigerator, invented by a black person, the traffic light. Imagine the respect that you could get from it from another person. But then look at how it inspires the student.
So you'd expand the teacher corps? You'd get...
Core curriculum would be history.
Right, and
Black,
changing the curriculum.
absolutely.
And
Bringing civics back into the school, Joe. We have BNN. We have the greatest technology. The hearings are going on in City Hall. All right, so why not pipe those into the schools for our children to be a part of this civic engagement, and then have the students do a case study?
what about, and not to shift gears too much, but what about this new assignment system that was put in place to try and get more parents engaged? And you were talking about all the elements you need to really make this. Do you think that's a good idea?
Parents will be engaged. However, Joe, even here on BNN, we're at some of the hearings and the meetings. The cry from the residents is that they want quality schools in every neighborhood. They want they want their child to be able to walk from home to a quality school, that has science, has technology, where their child can say, I am biology, I am math, I am science. So we have to start there. Again, remember,
So
the economy.
before we change the system, we need to improve the schools.
Absolutely. We have Tier 1 schools. Use them as models. And then an elected school committee. An elected school committee composed of students, teachers, parents, professors. Joe.
No more of the appointed, when it was put in place. And I know you've heard it all before, but say, we had to take the patronage out of the school department. We had to depoliticize it.
Joe,
didn't work.
Joe, this is a historic year. The residents of the city of Boston have to understand the power of the vote. They have the power to elect unproductive elected officials out of office and productive elected officials into office. It's not rocket science. We have to start doing the right thing, Joe. And our children, they are our future. And in order for the city of Boston to be a global city, to be part of the future, then we have to stop turning our back on our children and invest in our children, invest in our future, listen to our children.
Okay. Now, and this is an area I think, that you probably have as much to bring to this discussion as anybody in this city, having served in the capacity as a corrections official, as a Boston police officer, and then, of course, your activism in the community as well. There is, while the overall crime statistics are down, we continue to have these, horrendous crimes, horrendous shootings, murders, and what have we been missing? What is it that we can't kind of get a handle on this? That we can't kind of solve the crime issue, or is it too complicated?
Civic engagement, however, Joe, we cannot turn our backs on certain communities.
You think we have?
Since the bombing of the marathon, Joe, horrific, terrible event, there have been 100 shootings. 100 shootings in the city of Boston. 100. We have to understand as a community, as communities, and as one community, if we're truly going to be Boston one, that everybody's life is valuable. I commend, the the residents of South Boston, how they came out in force, unified, because of that horrific incident with Amy Lord. Okay. But the same type of outcry and the same type of support that the mayor and the commissioner gave for South Boston is the same that should be done for Roxbury, for Dorchester.
Is that not
for
happening?
Mattapan? You have 100 shootings, Joe. You don't see whistles being given out for 100 shootings. You don't see whistles being given out for that. Community policing. And I have to apologize, Joe, because there was an event that I should have been at today at 3 o'clock in City Hall where the city was marching because of the 100 shootings. And because of my schedule and other things, you know, just sitting here talking about it, you know, I feel, you know, the hurt is inside of me because I should have been there with support. The community should be supportive of one another. Remember I said, Joe, that my brothers and sisters' problems are my problems, and we solve those problems together. So let's get to community policing. Walking the beat. I walked the beat in beautiful Uptown Grove Hall for 4 years. I grew up in beautiful Uptown Grove Hall. I went to school at the Jeremiah E. Burke. I worshiped in Muhammad's Mosque. I got my clothes done at the cleaners. I ate at Keith's Place. We want police officers that are from the community so they can be positive role models, who understand the culture of that community. Not only that, we want officers, we want to create the trust back with the police department and the residents, the clergy, the organizations, the task force, I said the organizations. There needs to be this communication again. The officers need to get out of their vehicles, walk the beat, have a conversation, create this relationship, have the meetings. But also, Joe, you know, we need to start taking ownership of our streets. On the street that you live on, have a meeting once a month. Discuss the issues and the concerns of that street. And when you see something wrong on that street, you have to say something.
Well, and
it's not rocket science.
Yeah, why isn't that happening though? What happened? Why isn't that happening? And you know, is there something else at play? You know, I have to say that a lot of those, not a lot, but some of those shootings are, you know, strictly within the community of color.
Absolutely.
And does that mean that somebody isn't paying attention?
Well, our children...
Or is it something deeper than that?
Well, it goes back to education. Again, remember, I said in the Boston Public Schools, the children need to be inspired. They need to open up those books and see themselves in the book, and they have to understand their value. They need to see teachers who look like them, Joe. They need to have teachers who care about them. There is a statistic that talks about this pipeline from school to prison. Now, we got the technology to figure that out. They even say that by the 4th grade, they know how many children are gonna go to prison. Well, if you can figure that out, then you can figure out how to stop that. We have a great public college, UMass Boston. There should be a pipeline from the Boston Public Schools to our public college. It's not there. That pipeline needs to have, that relationship needs to be strengthened. And then we have teachers, student teachers in these colleges that are going to school to learn. Well, it's a revolving door. We can have the children.
So what's missing? The leadership?
The relationship, new leadership, Joe.
And why are you, why you? Why you, why now?
Because Joe, I've demonstrated over the years that I create things out of nothing. Robert Kennedy said there are those people who look at things the way they are and ask the question why. I dream of things that never were and ask the question, why not? Why not Charles Clemons for mayor? Why not an elective school committee? Why not quality schools in every neighborhood? Why not civic engagement in our, on our streets, in our communities? Why not police officers from the neighborhoods? Why not stop raising taxes on our elderly? They are an asset, Joe, not a liability. We stand on their shoulders. They're on a fixed income, and they're living under a threat of losing their homes or being homeless. So we've turned our back on our children, our future. We've turned our back on our elderly, our mature adults, our sensational seniors. There's something wrong with the picture. The mayor made a...
You won't.
I will never turn my back on my communities. A totally transparent administration, the Clemons administration will be totally transparent. Everyone will be invited to the table, young, old. And we have to remember that the mayor made a promise in his city address that Madison Park 2.5 years ago was going to be this model school. To this day, no headmaster. Yeah. To this day, lack of resources. It's time to start doing the right thing. And Mayor Clemons will do the right thing, and I'm your man, Joe.
I like your message. I like your message. Charles Clemons, one of 12 in the race for mayor, here tonight on Talking the Neighborhoods as we do all mayoral show as we turn the corner, heading towards the home stretch of the preliminary election. Joining us, Dan Connolly, another of the candidates that are running, and David James Wyatt, another candidate. We hope you'll join us then. Until then, for the entire staff and crew, thanks for watching.